How's everybody doing? Welcome back. Good to see all you guys again, which means it's either signing day or football starting again. So both two exciting days. Obviously, we had a really good summer sitting here in the midst of the 2024 Olympics. We've had a West Virginian Jeopardy contestant that rolled pretty good. The name flees me right now, but I did get to see a little bit of that. Obviously, spent a lot of time this summer with the team, Sunbelt Media Days, all the good things that say football is here. So really excited about today with camp opening. Today is kind of our information orientation day, which is really good. We'll hit the field tomorrow. It's been a really good summer. This is the opening of camp, but it's the continuation of months and months and months of preparation and progress, building towards the season coming up in 30 some odd days. So really excited about that. This is phase 4 of our organizational plan, starting in January with the fourth quarter program, getting into spring ball, then entering the summer phase, which we're coming out of. Now we get into the preseason fall camp testing phase, where we get to test the fundamentals and techniques that we've learned. We get to test all the schematical plays and things that we've put in on all three sides. And then we got to get ready to go to battle at the end of the month. So really exciting time. I think we've done a really good job as a staff, as an organization, of closing the talent gap. We lost some really good players. A lot of them are in NFL camps, and wishing them all the best. A lot of them were here this summer. It's funny because these guys say it's kind of like your kids. I can't wait to leave Marshall. I can't wait to get out of here. They get to the NFL, and as soon as they get a break, they all come back. So it was really good to see all those guys back. We lost some really good players, no doubt about it, on all levels, on both sides of the ball, in all three phases. But I think we've done a better job of closing the talent gap from the 1 to the 2. Does that mean that the ones are better than the ones last year? No. It just means that there's less of a drop-off from 1 to 2, which should create a lot more competition. There's obviously a reason there's the guys of 1, there's the guys of 2, but we've got to be able to get as many guys caught up to speed to be game ready as soon as possible. I think, again, we've probably got more talent across the board, which is really good, more evenly spread. I don't want to paint a picture of all of a sudden, hey, we've got this super talented team. It's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get everyone to understand, like, across the board, we've got more good football players. You look at last year, you had Rasheen Ali. I mean, he was special. And then the next group of guys were good. But the drop-off and how you had to change what you did when he was in the game or not in the game was huge. Owen Porter, the drop-off when he was not in the game, Micah Abraham, Eli Neal, those type of guys, their talent, their experience, their production and consistency was so farther ahead than some of the other guys for multiple reasons. Some of it was just pure God-given talent. Some of it was experience. Some of it was the fact that, Eli has played since the flood and been in a lot of games and a lot of situations. So we're more evenly spread, which is good. 45 new players, 31 via the transfer portal and the junior college ranks, and then 14 high school guys. Some of them got here in January. Some of them showed up last month in June. We are still actively improving the roster, so there's a handful of guys that I can't talk about, yet because of the things they got to go through, but they're tracking to be ready to play when we get to the game. So excited about that. What we've got to do in the next month is develop the proper fundamentals, consistency, and overall ability to respond. Last year, I thought at times as a team we played together. I didn't think we played for each other, and there is a distinct difference. Playing together is no different than if you guys go to the local park and play pickup basketball. You pick 5 guys, you play together. Playing for each other is the TBT. Those guys are playing for each other, playing for Marshall. So we've got to do that. We've got to get connected as a team. The X's and O's will take care of themselves. I think whether you love me or hate me or love the way we play or hate the way we play, the X's and O's are take care of themselves. It's the actual players. It's how do you respond from adversity, what happens when you don't make a play, what happens when you lose a game, what happens when you have a bad quarter, what happens when the other team has success, how do you respond? So we've been working on that all summer. Have done a lot of reading. Brad Smith, obviously phenomenal resource for us, has opened up some doors for us from a outside consulting piece. We've been able to talk with some of the people that are involved in the cybersecurity space and some of the military experts on team building and those type of things. You know, we had a chance to break down the book, the program as a staff, just some of the collective team building experiences, right? Because that's what you're doing now. It's different than 5 or 6 years ago when you recruited high school guys, they grew up together, you kind of watched them grow. Now, and every year, you're getting a brand new team, and really you're getting 2 teams because you're getting a team at the end of December where you're bringing in that portal window, and then you're doing it again at the end of spring. So you're really getting 2 versions of a team. So how do you get those guys ready to go to battle quickly? So a lot of the military principles apply to what we're doing and how you structure your core values and how you empower your leaders and how you get everybody on in the organization, coaches and players included, to understand you have a role and holding each other accountable. So those things have been really impressive to me this summer. At the end of the day, we got to go out and play well. Don't let me sit up here and pontificate about my reading adventures over the summer and make everybody think that I just snap my fingers and it goes. We got to play better. And when you look at the areas that we didn't play well in, we got to score more points. Is what it is. We've had some really good opportunities. We've played well in spurts offensively. We've done some good things. The reality is we didn't score enough points. And it doesn't matter what kind of defense you play in today's football, you got to be able to score. You look at the teams that are at the top of this conference, they score points. And their defense is able to respond from that. You still got to play good defense. Looking at last year, we've got to eliminate the explosive plays. That was kind of some of the things that tripped us up. Third down and red zone, we're tops in the country. But explosive plays given up, turnovers gotten, not so good. Offensively, we turned it over way too many times. So that formula doesn't mix. No points and turnovers. Even Luke can tell you that that's not good. Okay, so we've got to get that fixed. How do you get that fixed? Obviously, we've changed systems. I think the air raid system will play more to our strengths, especially with where we are, right? We don't have the bell cow, Rasheen Ali. And sometimes I've been in multiple really, really good offenses, and sometimes when you have a good player, you're a little bit handicapped because you're trying to find a way. He's got to touch it. He's got to touch it. He's got to touch it. And then when you don't have him, you put so much time in that he's got to touch it. He's got to touch it. You haven't developed the things around it. We've been able to develop the things around it. Obviously, the passing game will be better because we've recruited, developed, brought in some more weapons at the receiver position. The quarterback position will be better. Obviously, Cole is a year improved. Braylon Braxton has played at a really high level. Offensive line, we've got a lot of new pieces, so the connectivity of them playing together is going to be important. I think part of the scheme will help them. The air raid system is about getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly. The reality of it is there's about 3 schools in the country that can block for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds. These guys on the other side of the ball are good. They run like linebackers and they move like DBs, and they're 260, 70 pounds. So I think from that perspective, offensively, we're going to be good. Toby Payne coming back is going to give us answers over the middle and some matchup issues. He can do both. He can be productive in the run game and in the pass game. Cade Conley coming back will give us some variables in that area. You guys think about it. You didn't see Toby from training camp to the rest of the year, and I didn't kick him off the team. That's part of the ebbs and flows of a season. Cade, the same way. At one point, Cade was our leading receiver, and then he disappeared for 4 or 5 weeks due to injury. So having those guys back will give us some variables. Obviously, on defense, when you're good on defense, you got a good D-line. So that was our focus going out in the transfer portal. How can we improve the depth at our D-line? If you think back a few years ago, we were really, really deep at D-line, and we were good. We stopped teams. We were able to stop the run, which made it, passing predictable, which allowed guys like Owen Porter, Sam Burton, those type of guys to go make plays on the quarterback in passing situations. We weren't as deep last year, so we weren't able to stop the run. So now we get into situations where it's 50-50. Are they going to pass or are they going to run? It changes things. So we made a very intentional focus about going and making sure our D-line was deep, making sure we had the talent on the D-line. That's going to be a huge part for us. Obviously, our linebackers took a huge hit 2 years ago. We lost Charlie Gray and Abe Beauplan and Eli Neal. They were kind of staples. Well, we lost 2 of those guys and brought in some new guys. So we were able to kind of revamp our linebacker room. I think Coach Semore is going to do a really good job of coaching those guys. Linebackers can do a really good job of being statistically irrelevant if the D-line is really good. If they can fill gaps, the D-line can fill gaps, make it really, really hard to run. Takes a lot of pressure off of the linebackers. The linebackers can play a lot more free when they know the guys up front are going to be consistently in their gap, holding their gap, getting push. Some of that last year was part of the issue. We weren't able to be consistent in our gaps, get the right push. Linebackers are forced to do a lot more, puts a lot of pressure on them. Our secondary, as much as I used to have hair when I took this job, we ended up playing 2 true freshmen last year, and you guys probably had as many head scratchers as I did with AG and Amir Foster. Well, the beauty of that is they're a year older, and they played a lot. And I think if you really look as the season went on, they got better. Amir got a huge pick in the last game of the year. So that, call it, issue last year really benefited us this year. Obviously, J.J. Roberts, really good player, missed some time, had to play those freshmen. Well, now we got all 3 of them back. So that helps. Dayton Smith missed a lot of time for last year. We got him back. Yes, we did lose Micah Abrams at the corner, but I think we've brought in some really good guys of where we are. Jordan Regan, Isaiah Johnson, Anthony Richard, Jacoby Henderson. Moten has been kind of a utility wrench for us in the secondary, playing multiple spots. So as far as the talent across the board being spread, we feel really good about it. And then special teams-wise, I'll be honest, I don't know if Reese Veerhoff will be a world-class kicker, but he's the hardest worker we have on the team. And everybody will tell you that. The kid has worked his tail off this summer to be ready. And if you follow the trend, we've got to continue to monitor him. Beginning of the year, he starts off really strong. It's typical. The more you kick off, the more you kick field goals as the year goes on. You're going to have some, physical, drop-off. We've got to be able to maintain that. We've got some other guys now who can take some of the load off from a kickoff perspective and kind of use both, which should help him sustain a little longer. And then the part that nobody sees in the stands or nobody really pays attention to on the stat sheet, we've got a punter. We brought in Alec Clark from across the pond, as he would say. So we brought him in last fall camp. He got here about the middle of fall camp from Australia. I reached out to Chris Grassi and kind of did a study. Okay, how long is it going to take this young man to transition, right? It's not just come over and kick. They don't play football in Australia. So, yeah, he can go out and punt, and he can hit 80-yarders, 70-yarders, but the actual game and the technique and the flow, a regular practice, how long is he going to take? So Chris Grassi was able to give me a lot of advice on how to manage him. And for those of you who paid attention to the bowl game, we had our best punting performance. He hit 2 punts over 50 yards. That was the first time we threw him out there. Well, where does that matter? Nobody really knows a punter. Well, 5% of our defensive possessions last year were in the middle of the field, meaning from the minus 45 in. So we were getting the ball with playing half the field defense. Well, it's going to be tough. You don't score points, you turn the ball over, and you play half the field defense, you end up 6-7. It is what it is. I think everybody was here for the baseball score at JMU. Their punter kept us in backed up territory. Well, if we can get 1 or 2 of those possessions where we're at the middle of the field, it changes the game. So those little things are the reason I'm excited. Actually, we got to go out and do it. Alec has done a really good job of adjusting. The team loves his Australian accent. He is. I've never been to Australia, but he is like the happiest person in life. Like, I don't know if Australia is a tough place to live, but he loves America. He loves this team. He loves this town. He loves Huntington. He has truly embraced the opportunity that he's gotten. So I really look forward to him giving us a boost in that area on special teams. It's okay to punt if the punt's effective. If we can punt teams down inside the 20, I think our defense, minimizing the explosive plays, is going to be pretty good, and that's going to be a huge piece of the improvement for us. So, and then obviously made some adjustments in the coaching staff, bringing in, Seth Doege, phenomenal mind offensively. Obviously played for the late great Mike Leach. He is the last quarterback to play for Mike Leach at Texas Tech that has not become an offensive coordinator. All the rest of them have become offensive coordinators. So he was the next in line. And he has done a phenomenal job of taking ownership of everything offense. He's developed unbelievable relationships. He's hard on the guys. He's yelling at them before I get to yell at him. It makes me mad. I don't even get to throw my hat anymore because he's already on them. But you talk about complete ownership, complete confidence, and the players gravitate to that, which has been really good. Cody Creel came in with him. Cody Creel's got a ton of experience from an offensive line perspective. He's with the D.C. Defenders last season. He's been a head coach. He's been an offensive coordinator in the air raid system for a long time. Josh Miller worked with Coach Doege as an offensive analyst at Purdue. He's our tight end coach. Telly Lockett, being promoted to associate head coach, has been with us since the start, has done a really good job recruiting and developing the running back room. I know we lost, Rasheen Ali, but, you guys looked at me crazy when Rasheen Ali took an absence and then appeared this guy named Kalen LeBourne. So I know you guys looked at me crazy now. Well, who's going to be the running back? I'm not saying that I'm the running back whisperer, but traditionally I've had a good eye for what it takes to be a quality back. And it doesn't mean the fastest, biggest, strongest. You got to be able to fit the system. The success that I've had with running backs has not come by just a cookie cutter, everybody's the same. It comes with who fits the system, how can you help them improve what they do well. Obviously, Aaron Dobson has done a phenomenal job for us. You talk about a person that loves this place. Obviously, has played at a really high level here and in the NFL. He's done a really good job with the receivers, and he's got a room full of new ones. So it's really interesting to watch him grow as a coach. And then defensively promoting, Bob Shoop to assistant head coach. And people ask, well, why do you have two? Well, there's a few different lanes, There's the lane of the assistant head coach that, helps manage game day and those type of things. When do you go for it on fourth down? What's the 4-minute clock? When should we take a timeout? Hey, possession-wise, give you that balance. And Coach Shoop's experience from football, if we added all of our experiences in games up in here together, he's probably doubled that. So he's seen a lot of football. So managing the game and making suggestions from a game management position. Same thing with practice. What drills are we practicing? Hey, we're struggling with this. We may need to practice this more or less. And then Coach Lockett from the associate head coach position is more of the in-house management. Hey, X, Y, and Z player's mom passed away. Let me sit down and talk to him. Hey, Johnny's struggling with whatever it may be. Let me kind of get close to him on both sides of the ball. And then just managing our day-to-day operation and relationships, right? We got people on the other side of the hallway from an administrative perspective that help us immensely, and having managed those relationships. So both of them have done a really good job. And then we brought in Henry Baker to coach our corners. Henry and I were GAs together back at Maryland back in 2010. We worked together back in Maryland, whenever that was. Henry's gone on and been a defensive coordinator and done a really good job developing corners at a high level, so he's been a good addition as well. So really excited about where we are. Obviously, again, I don't want to paint a picture of, everything's beautiful and everything's peachy cream. We win every game by 50. We got a lot of work to do in the next 30 days, but I'm really excited to do the work with this group of guys.
Question? Coach, when you talk about, the opener, and now with the portal, not just here but everywhere, is there more of a sense of urgency from the coaching standpoint and the players to get busy quicker, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, well, I think, the rules have changed a little bit, so we got a lot more access. We're allowed to have a lot more meetings. We're allowed to do walkthroughs in the winter and the summer. So what it does is you have that same sense of urgency, but you're allowed to spread it out a little bit. You know what I mean? Because really, when we go to install 1 tomorrow, it'll be about the 5th time we've done it. You know what I mean? So that helps. Obviously, we're not allowed to put on pads, so that's going to be an adjustment. But as far as the teaching of schematical, the teaching of, how do we run our indie drills, how does coach perform, you're able to do more of that now in the off season in the summer. So when you get to camp, it's a little bit of, we're doing it again instead of, okay, here's the first time. Even the new guys, guys get here in, the end of May, beginning of June, so you get 2 months to do a little bit more. It used to be where, coaches were hands off and it was all player led. Now we're able to have a little more access with them, a little more connectivity with them. And that's not just sitting in the meeting room or out on the field doing a walkthrough. That's taking the guys down to Roosters and, sitting around and having a meal. That matters, That's, having the guys in your office and just talking about anything but football. That matters, when you're talking about a new player coming in. This is different than a high school player coming in because typically these transfers are coming in, they've had 1 or 2 other coaches. They've had 1 or 2 other systems. So that time to kind of get them acclimated to how we do things here at Marshall matters, and it's important. So it helps ease a little bit of the urgency to get things done in camp, and it helps focus more on the excitement to get things done.
And to build off that, to your point, does that help with that access to get them to where they play for each other instead of just playing together?
Yeah, it used to be the old, I talked to a bunch of different coaches in a bunch of different sports. If you think about it, in today's world, Johnny can join Marshall from X, Y, and Z university. He can come to meetings, he can come to lifting, he can do the walkthroughs, he can go to class. He can go back to his apartment, put a headset on, his little video game, and talk to everybody on his old team. He can make 1 phone call, food shows up at the door. So you can isolate yourself now because of where we are in today's society. It used to be you had to play cards. You had to go down to the common room and play cards with the guys or play checkers. If you wanted a pizza, you had to go down to the door to pick up the pizza. By the time you got back to your room, 7 people had ate your pizza. Well, they don't have to do that anymore. So the ability to get around these guys and just get to know each other, the ability to have, players over at your house, the ability to, go down to Roosters or go to a paintball or do those type of things. They seem very small and, maybe not as important, but that's when you really get to know. Like, for example, we've got about 7, maybe 10 kids on our team that have kids. Well, if you never come out of your apartment to actually have a conversation with someone, no one knows you have kids. No one knows your family situation because the old days when you were a freshman, mom came up to see your roommate, so she took you to eat as well. You got to know them. Well, we don't do that anymore. So anytime we can just get around each other and remove the football, that helps get to know. Now, when I get on the field, I know this guy's playing because he's got a kid. I know this guy's playing because his mom's got cancer. I know this guy's playing because, hey, he lost his brother when he was in high school, and every day he comes out on this field, he's playing for his brother. If I know that about him, I don't want to let him down. I know why he's going hard. I know how important this is to him. And the more of that we can find out sooner, the more connected this team gets. It also is going to help in adversity, right? If I look at you and you're having an off day, it's easier for me to come up and say, hey, man, you doing okay if I know you. If not, I'm just going to walk by you and hey, see you tomorrow. So that has really helped us. We'll get it to put it to test, now that we actually have football and adversity and you got to hit somebody, you got to get hit. But I really think this team is a lot closer than we've been in the past.
When you look at the technology upgrades and allowances for this season, video replay with tablets on the sidelines, some direct communication through phones. How do you guys plan to utilize that, and how beneficial is that to college football?
Yeah, well, we used the in-helmet communication a little bit this spring. I think it's going to help us a lot because we got a new offense. So where you have, Cole or Braxton, where they may not see something or they may not know what play to check to, we're going to be able to help. So it really speeds up the learning curve that everyone's worried about. Well, how do you learn the air raid in 6 months? Well, you're not going to master it, but now we can take some of that off of the quarterback of having to remember this check versus this check. Hey, if you see this, do this. Oh, don't forget to do this, because now we can kind of tell him, if that makes sense. Obviously, it cuts off at a certain point, so you got to go play football, but you can at least give him some keys and things, take a little bit off the players, put more on the coaches. The tablets, I think, are going to be big. I don't know if you guys have never been on the sideline, but when these guys come off the field, they see ghosts. I mean, they see it was 13 guys out there. Well, it couldn't have been 13 guys. I mean, well, he went left. Well, he couldn't have went left because the play went right. I mean, so now it's going to help eliminate some of that, especially on the O-line, because a lot of times if I'm the right tackle, I don't know what the left DN did. You know what I mean? But typically, they're all connected on D-line. You know what I mean? So I know if the left DN tightened his alignment up, that means they were probably slanting. So now when the left DN tightens his alignment, if I'm the left tackle, I can yell, hey, alert slant. That helps, so we can show them that. The other thing that we can do is you can help quarterbacks with coverage. In the NFL, when I had time to spend with the Buffalo Bills, Ryan Fitzpatrick was our quarterback, and there were a lot of times where the receivers saw a certain coverage or a certain reaction, and the quarterback may have been a little different. So now you can get them both together and say, no, this is still the same coverage. This guy was just a yard closer or a yard deeper, or this guy didn't move as fast. So it's going to be able to make some in-game adjustments, which should allow us to be consistent. I don't think that you're going to be coming up with new plays. I think what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to run the same plays that you had planned for with clarity. That's what it's going to be able to do. We always come back in a meeting and we look at 15 or 20 plays that we're like, yeah, we practice it this way, but we didn't run it that way because of whatever. We'll be able to minimize that now, and maybe you go to 4 or 5 plays instead of 10 or 15. You got a quarterback question? You usually are ready for the quarterback question. I was ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. I got it right here. Yeah.
Do you need a hug, Coach? You want to hug it out?
No, it's first day. I'm fired up. I'm ready.
So you mentioned changing the offense. What inspired you to change it to like an air raid? And when you look at the personnel, how's that fit?
Yeah, so I did a study this offseason, and I looked at every league, right, from P5 or A5, whatever you want to call it now, all the way down to Division III. And when you look at the top 10 offenses at all levels, they're all some version of air raid. And I'm talking about scoring in yards. They're all some version of air raid. Now, I do think, the air raid has kind of morphed, right? There's the old school Mike Leach version, and now it's kind of what Lane and, Jeff Lebby have gotten into. But they're all kind of same, come from the same core. When you look at that, you do that breakdown, that study, they're all some version of air raid. And as I did more studies about, well, what is it about this area? Because those guys are like a cult now. They don't give out any secrets. Like, there's no playbook out there. Like, I went to talk to Seth Doege and interview him. He was like, well, I don't have a playbook. I was like, okay, you've got a playbook. But so it's a little bit of a, they keep it tight. Well, when you really start to dive into it, the thing that the air raid really gives you, it takes pressure off the O-line because they don't have to block as long. It takes pressure off the O-line because typically air raid, you throw the ball more intermediate, so your box counts and your bodies that you have to block in the box are usually a lighter. So now it's easier for 5 guys to block 5 guys, or 5 guys to block 6 and read a guy. 5 guys to block 5, read the 6th guy. And then, it's not to throw the ball down the field every play. It's short intermediate passes. So now maybe I don't have to be as accurate as a passer because I'm not throwing the ball 20 or 30 yards down the field. I'm throwing intermediate routes, typically where the receiver is looking at me or running across my face, which allows me to be more accurate without having to throw things on a dime or fit things in tight coverage. And then the other thing is there's not a lot of plays. So you're really repping the same plays over and over and over. For those of you who kind of know our model, we take a lot of reps in practice. Well, if we're taking a lot of reps at the same plays over and over and over, obviously repetition is the mother of all teaching and learning. So that's what's going to help these guys. So how do you get a Cole Pennington or a Braylon sped up? Well, he's got a handful of plays that he's going to run 1,000 times between now and the first game. So even if we get into the first game and they don't play the exact coverage or the exact look we anticipated, Well, he's seen all the variations of coverage versus this play. He should be able to process through it quickly. Typically with the air raid, it forces teams to get very generic on defense because you can't get into, all the kinds of different fronts and looks because obviously the ball comes out quick. The run game is usually better because obviously people will think air raid, they think pass, so the running lanes are bigger. In the air raid, the way they kind of evaluate the running back is not just how many rushing yards he has, it's how many passing yards is he involved in as well. So maybe, whoever the starting running back becomes has, 89 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 116 receiving yards. Well, that's no different than us handing it to Ali for 300 rushing. I mean, so there's different variations, different ways to get to the same thing, eliminating some of the pressure on we have to be great up front. We have to have a great receiver. We have to have a great running back. It kind of eases and kind of spreads out some of that responsibility across the board.
Last question. Obviously the expanded playoff comes this year, there have been small talks about, a G5 and a P5 playoff. Any thoughts on that? I know Keith Gill kind of expressed his opinions last week at media days, but personal thoughts on that?
Yeah, from a conference perspective, we're interested in competing for the championship. Obviously, there's people way above me that make ultimate decisions, but we're interested in competing for the championship. I think with the expanded playoffs, it's going to be a lane. I think if you think back a couple years, Cincinnati is kind of the model. You have an opportunity to get there, and then once you get there, it's not like basketball in the tournament because I think it's a little more parity. But once you get a chance to get there, now you put your best against their best. So. As far as a conference perspective, we're interested in playing in the big one, and I think where they've gone with the expanded model, it gives teams a chance to come out of the A5, group of 5, whatever you want to call it, ranks, and have an opportunity. I'm interested to see kind of how it plays out. What does what team gets in and how is their path? But I think. Us here at Marshall, us in the Sun Belt, we're interested in playing, in the college football playoffs as a whole, not one group and another group. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys. Go Herd.
All right, offensive coordinator Seth Doege.
Seth, Coach Todd kind of talked about the air raid a little bit, and simplified it for us, dumbed it down a little bit. Can you do the same with what it brings to the offense and what the fans can expect to see?
Absolutely. Well, my background is with Mike Leach as well as Neil Brown, who Neil had his own version back when I was playing for him. And to me, there was really only one air raid guy at the end of the day these past few years, and that was Mike Leach, truly running the air raid. Everybody that's kind of broken off from him or that's played for him and is now is coaching, doing their own thing with it, has put their own flavor on it. And so Graham Harrell, who obviously I've coached with in the past for the last couple of years, I think he put it into words that makes a lot of sense. And he would always say, the air raid is a philosophy of doing a few things really, really, really well, and getting really good at those concepts that have answers versus almost everything, to where you can simplify and keep your rules consistent for the kids, to where you're not having to run the 300 best plays of the world and being mediocre at half of them. Well, now you have these, 20 to 30 concepts that you're really, really good at that you can make it by formation, by motion, look complex to a defense. But at the end of the day, the rules and fundamentals stay consistent for the kids. So now they're going into a game, and under any circumstance, under any look, you're eliminating mental chatter. You're creating an opportunity for a bunch of reps. So now they have a bunch of confidence going in and executing those specific plays, whether those specific plays may be air raid plays or some different type of flavor that you found over the years that may work just a little bit better for you or your personnel. You stay true to that philosophy. I think it allows your kids to play more confident and more free.
Obviously, your first few months here were about getting people in for that system. Do you feel like, once you got into spring ball, now the summer, now fall camp, stuff gets real, you turn the page and really start getting to work with these guys?
Absolutely. I feel like we're finally in a place where they're very comfortable with what we're doing. I feel like we're getting to a point where it's being executed at a way more consistent base than it was when I first got here, just because we're throwing everything at them, probably probably more than I've ever thrown, or I've been at a place where we've thrown more out of them where they were having to adjust. There was a bunch of new rules that I've put my own flavor on this thing. So there's some things that I'm going to do that, Graham doesn't do. There's going to be things that I do that, I didn't learn from Mike Leach, or I didn't learn from Neil, or, some stuff that I learned at Ole Miss under Kiffin that I've kind of implemented. And so there's always, or with that being said, our kids having to adjust and learn all that stuff in a short period of time. Obviously, there was some growing pains through that. But the way things are structured around here with Coach Huff has kind of allowed us to, in my opinion, be further ahead than, where we would normally be, just because of the amount of, reps he's allowed me to get and through spring practice and stuff like that. So, and then obviously our kids did a great job of some player-led practices over the summer, of taking really some player accountability, and a lot of leadership has grown from that. I think about like Elijah Smooth when I'm talking about that, or not Elijah, I call him Smooth, Elijah Metcalf, who we refer to as Smooth. Well, Smooth has taken an approach to really get those receivers and quarterbacks out there to where now they're getting a ton of reps through the summer. Well, now all of a sudden fall camp starts, and we're not. Yeah, we may start day one tomorrow, but day one should look like we've been running this system for 2 to 3 years now, just because of the amount of reps that those guys got on their own this summer.
With the newness of the air raid to the quarterbacks, does that help with that competition, since everybody's starting from ground zero? Does that really help prompt that competition more?
Absolutely. And so now you finally get a true evaluation of the guys and what they can do in the system, right? I think going through, spring and the summer, and me trying to make a decision on who our starting quarterback's going to be would have been almost unfair, just because guys were still learning. You know what I mean? And we were making adjustments as we were going because of what we had personnel-wise. Maybe something that worked at Purdue wasn't very good here, just because we had maybe like a really, really talented tight end that could really stretch the field. Well, I think Toby's going to be really, really special for us. I think we can do a lot of different things, but he's not that inside receiver that we had at Purdue. So like some of those concepts, you got to change a little bit just for personnel standpoint, and you can't grade the quarterback as much just because all those guys are still learning too, as well as them. And so now I feel like, again, we've established a base to where I feel very confident we're going into fall camp understanding the schematics and the fundamentals and the details of everything that we're trying to do, where now you can go truly get an evaluation process on who your best quarterback is.
Two pretty talented tight ends returning in Toby and Cade. That position is kind of one that can make or break an offense in a lot of ways. How beneficial is it to have those guys back and be able to utilize their unique skill set?
Kind of going back to the air raid philosophy here, my philosophy is to be really good at a few things and make it look complex, and motion shift and squeeze sets and pack sets and all sorts of different sets, but stay true to your consistent rules and fundamentals, right? With that being said, the only way you can do that is you got to have a tight end that can play multiple spots, right? And Toby and Cade allow you to have that flexibility. And even Justin, to a standpoint, gives you some flexibility. But having those guys, like you said, is important to us, just because it also allows us to have some diversity in the run game, which is not an air raid term, run game. But I do think, the whole diversity of the run game and implementing that into what we do, as well as having maybe a few quarterbacks on roster that can run, and you obviously add the quarterback run game to it. Now you're adding, a whole 2 other dimensions to the air raid that, could cause issues for a defense.
What's the learning curve like, not for the players but for the other coaches? Since Coach Huff kind of alluded that you keep your playbook secret, so what was that training like? Just kind of getting them used to what you're doing, the terminology, being comfortable with it.
I think probably the best asset I have here is quality coaches, especially on the offensive side, just because I work with them directly. But I think about Aaron Dobson, where obviously he was a great player here. He did tremendous things in the NFL. But that dude was born a coach. And he has no ego. he wants to do the things exactly the way you want to do them. If he ever has an issue, he doesn't hesitate with bringing up issues, but he does it in a way that's very professional. So me and him work extremely well together. And so being able to teach him was like, I mean, it's almost like he's played in the system. He already knows it. He can coach it like he's played in it, like, or he's worked with me for years. I trust him completely. Telly's the same way. Telly's just a professional he's kind of been around spread offenses before. He worked for Kendall Brawls, so he's been in an up-tempo offense before. So he gets it, and he actually has some great ideas. Cody Creel coached in the same offense. Was the offensive coordinator in the same offense, and then Coach Miller, who I hired as a tight ends coach. I mean, he's kind of like my right-hand man. He understands exactly how I want to do it and where I want to go with it. So he sees the game through the same lens as I do. So collectively, I have extreme confidence in letting those guys go and teach and making. And when we hit the field, I have complete confidence that our guys are going to know what to do. So to your point, it's almost like I've been blessed in a sense of having really good coaches around me, and blessed with hiring the right guys, as well as being surrounded by Dobb and Telly, who are already here, that truly want to win, and whatever it takes to win, they'll do, and been unbelievable teammates.
Next question.
Obviously with some enhanced technology being able to be used in game and on the sidelines, do you wish you had that kind of thing as a player, to be able to look at a play on a tablet afterward, or get some communication in the helmet?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I don't know if and Neil probably he won't like this comment. I don't know if I want Neil Brown in my head. You know what I mean? because and it's really more of a joke than anything. But he was great on game day. But I remember what he did such a good job of was, man, we would sit down and he would have a sheet of the exact calls that we went over, and we would go through them, me, him, and the quarterback GA, exactly what you saw, how'd the play end up, why did you go there, why did you make that check, and that was super instrumental to me on game day, right? But you always had to visualize that. There was no picture to look at. It was all visual in your head of exactly what, and if there was any confusion, or we weren't on the same page, now you had to draw it up. Okay, so that eliminates that type of time, because sometimes you're in the middle of drawing it up, turnover, and we didn't get past that point. So now if you have a picture on the sideline, yes, that gives you some time that you wish you had back, but I would have loved that. I do think on that topic, it's like I talked to Kevin Sumlin about this. He probably gave me the best advice on the headset communication, is you don't talk in the quarterback's backswing. So you can give him enough information to allow him to go have success, but once it's set, if you don't really have much else to say, don't sit there to say stuff just to say stuff, because now he's about to tee it up and all of a sudden you're still talking. Talking to Cliff about the same thing is like still giving them enough information through a headset, but allowing them to play free, because if you talk to them too much, then all of a sudden you're clouding their mind. There's chatter in their mind. They're not focused on the right thing, and they're not playing confidently, with what they're seeing. And Davis Webb told me the same thing. I talked to a bunch of guys, like Davis Webb is the quarterback coach for the Broncos, man, and playing in the NFL, and him actually going through it, being able to coach an all-star game, and being able to coach a guy that I've coached, Keaton Slovis. I got to talk to those guys one-on-one, and both of them kind of said the same thing, is like, once the information is given, unless you have a check to make, let those guys play.
Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, everybody.
Hi, guys.
For Coach Semore.
Welcome back. It's good to be here, man.
How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing well.
A lot of big names that you had to try to replace. You can't really replace them, but just the overall look at your defensive and efforts, and who do you think maybe the guys to step in for the Porters and the Abrahams and those guys?
Right now, we don't really know. We have a pretty good idea as far as working depth chart, stuff like that, but we got a lot of unknowns. It's a huge difference from last year. Last year we had tons of guys that played a lot of ball, tons of experience, things like that. This year we have a group that by and large hasn't played a lot of football. So there's a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses to that. As far as names goes, there's guys that did play for us last year that were put into new roles because of injury or things like that, which will end up being a blessing for us this year. Ian Foster's of the world, A.G. McGee, Landon Watson, Yates. There's tons of guys. Obviously, we're going to lean on the experience of Tyquez Legs and Mike Green and guys that have played a lot of football here. So we're excited. We're able to do. We've kind of revamped it a little bit. It's going to be a different identity, scheme-wise, mentality-wise. It'll be the same. We're always going to try to do what Marshall's always done, and that's play terrific defense. So we're going to try to fight for that again this year. But in terms of new names and new faces, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of guys. It's exciting for me as a coach, as a developer of players, and a guy that's responsible for the scheme and stuff like that, kind of evaluating the guys throughout the spring and the summer and finding out their skill set and how much they're able to process. That'll be a huge part of us for camp, is we have an idea of what we want to do and how we want to package the defense, but how heavy of install can we get without sacrificing execution? And that'll be up to the guys' level of work and how much they invest in the preparation process. Usually in fall camp, you start with a base install, and you kind of grow from there conceptually to complement what you want to do defensively. In our minds as coaches, we kind of live and breathe the football stuff. So we have a bunch of ideas and a bunch of things we're excited about, but you can't sacrifice volume for execution. So the more we feel good about the execution in fall camp, the farther we can move into the install, into the playbook, and have a working knowledge of what we want to do during the season. So it's an exciting time. We get to develop some dudes and kind of build their identity for the future and put their stamp on it. You know what I mean? Those guys left a legacy here. They played good defense for a long time. So now I know that there's guys that are really excited to step into their own identity and leave their own mark and leave a legacy here. So it'll be exciting to watch how those guys develop.
Chance to coach the linebackers this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's that opportunity going to be like for you? Obviously, you've done it before, but handling that and DC responsibility.
That's where I find my joy. I find my joy in developing my players and getting the most out of them. It makes it more personal when you have your own room. You're more invested in a specific group of guys instead of the global what's going on in schematic details of the defense. Obviously, there is more on my plate from a practice organization standpoint, from a everything from the scout team to how we operate and what we want to focus on and emphasize fundamentally, schematically, and tactically, stuff like that. But I'm really excited about it because, at the end of the day, you get in this business to develop your players and to give them a foundational knowledge of football and give them the tools to be the best version of themselves. That's why we coach. So I'm really excited about investing in those guys.
What position group do you feel like has grown the most this offseason?
I would say the DB room. And the DB room probably has. We probably have the most experience in terms of guys that have played and the volume of guys that have played, from J.J. Roberts and guys like that, Ishmael. We are doing more schematically in the back end compared to last year. So I really feel good about where they're at from a confidence level standpoint. So in terms of just overall growth from point A to point B, I like where the DBs are right now. Really, when you look at it and you break it down from position to position, you have to look at it kind of as an individual standpoint more than a group standpoint. At the end of the day, you need 11 dependable bodies on the field. Their job and our job is to get as many guys above that line as possible. Right now, just numbers-wise, I feel like we have a lot of DBs that can play. You know what I mean? So that's sort of, in a long way, answer your question. That's how I would probably judge the room in terms of growth. You know what I mean? Not necessarily high-end players or impact players, but there's a lot of guys that we feel comfortable with getting ready going into the season at that position.
With the offense being an air raid, can that impact, I guess, defense and maybe what you need to call? Whereas if there's a lot of running plays, it gives guys some rest and whatnot. Does the change of the offense have an impact on what you might have to do?
Sure, that's a great question, because a large volume of the work that we get from a schematic standpoint in practice is obviously going against your offense. So you're getting banked reps at defending air raid, so to speak, right? Those passing formations and concepts and the structures of the offense, right? So there's always positives and negatives to that, though. An air raid offense is going to better prepare you to play passing teams, your Georgia Southerns of the world, your ODUs of the world, things like that. At the disadvantage, you're not seeing as much pro-style run game and 12 personnel formation structure, App State, you know what I mean, JMU, stuff like that. So you have to find a way in practice to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. You have to find a way to get that schematic adjustment work and those different run fits and the different conceptual passes that you get out of the offensive identity. But it's been really good for us because we were 12 personnel pro-style-y last year. We were multiple. We did little elements of both, which gave us a large volume of offense to defend in practice. But seeing all the conceptual pass stuff, which it's a lot heavier in terms of that. So it's really like going back to what group has developed the most. The DBs have seen a high volume of pass concepts. They've seen a lot from our guys. So it's really helped us in the back end. We have to make sure and be intentional and spend time on bigger personnel groupings in 12 and 30 and 21, and that's what makes college football hard. You know what I mean? Is you're gonna go play a 13 personnel shift motion power duo, all that kind of stuff, play action passing grid route type stuff team, and the next week you're playing a wide open spread air raid team, and you know what I mean? That's what makes it hard, is you got to defend a lot of offense. So it's important that we're multiple within our install, which is the battle that we always have. We want to feel good about the install and have the guys have a conceptual knowledge, but we got to be careful not just to try to defend our offense every day, because we have to prepare to play a lot of volume of offense in the course of the season.
Two more.
I know it's a month away, but it's a defense that's going to get tested pretty heavily right out the gate.
Sure.
The first 3 games against Power 5 opponents. Does that, that presents an opportunity to kind of put to the tests immediately what you guys have worked on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We spend a large amount of our time kind of focusing on being the best version of ourselves. I think that traditionally and historically here, Marshall's always played up to those games. Those guys want to play in those games. There's not a lot to do with on my part in terms of motivating the guys to go get ready to play those games. You know what kind of effort you're going to get from our guys in those games. Really our job is to put them in the best situation where we feel good and put them in an advantageous position schematically. Will it be a challenge? Absolutely. And that college football is difficult, but it's also football's blocking and tackling, and that comes down to Jimmys and Joes and X's and O's and effort and fundamentals and things like that. So from the jump, we'll kind of get a real test in a big way from dudes that haven't played a lot from big time college football teams. So I'm excited to go see what the guys can do. I know they're excited to go prove themselves and kind of put their mark on this season is Marshall football. So we're excited about the opportunity.
Last one.
Coach talked about the being together and that cohesiveness. You lost a lot of emotional leaders on defense.
Mm-hmm.
There are some guys stepping up early on that you see that maybe that guy to be more of that continuity.
Sure, and that's something that we're in the process of developing. That comes from confidence. How you practice is probably going to be how you play. So we talk to the guys all the time that practice is just demonstrated ability to show that you can do it in the game. I like where we're at From a communication standpoint, I think we're the best that we've ever been. We've put a big emphasis on that. From the front core, we have guys that are doing a tremendous job. Mike Green and Legs, specifically in the core, Jaden Yates and Landon Watson have done a great job in terms of what they're responsible for in a communication progression before the ball is snapped. J.J. Roberts will be a huge piece for us. It hurt when we lost him last year. He was kind of our communicator in the back end. So we got to keep developing the young guys that are going to rotate back there, because at the end of the day, that's where explosives in college football come from: missed tackles and not communicating. So that's one of the standards of our organization on the defensive side of the ball. So we have to make sure that when those guys are put in those situations in big-time college football games, that they fall back on their training. So we have to build those habits daily. It'll be a huge piece.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Coach Galante.
We'll just start off just by saying this. From a special teams perspective, we got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of really good competition going on all sides of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams, and some critical roles on special teams. So just looking forward to getting started with practice tomorrow. Questions?
Nothing really changes for you. We're talking defense, air raid, all that stuff. For you, it's just consistency. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's right. And we'd like to keep it that way. We're striving to be as consistent as we can be. I mean, some things may change with team strategy, how you manage the game on offense and defense, but for us, we'd like to stay that way, keep it consistent.
Obviously, you replaced John McConnell, the guy like Alec coming in. Coach talked a lot about what he brings to the team, but what is it about those guys from across the pond? He's not the only one in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, they're it's not my first experience with an Australian punter. They probably get a bad rap for being just roll or rugby guys. It's become a big deal over there. It's an opportunity for kids in Australia to earn a scholarship, just like it is for kids here. So they're well trained, and there's a couple of groups that do a great job training these kids. And I think the biggest thing is just getting them acclimated to what we do, not just as a football program, but even just in America in general. For most of those guys, it's their first time. So he's done a great job, and we had a really good plan for him for when he got here last year, and taking that red shirt and being ready to go this year. So.
Got some ideas on your return guys, I'm sure, who you may put back there.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of really good competition there. Several guys on both sides have done a great job. Chuck Montgomery's done a great job, and he's a guy that's played a great role on special teams at various positions and has trained at that at returner. A.J. Turner and Ethan Payne both have experience at kick return. So all of those guys have done a great job. Spring ball, summer, they're in great shape, competing for one of those jobs.
When you look at I asked Huff and Seth about this, the enhanced on-field communication with the ability to watch plays over on a tablet.
Yeah.
How does that help on special teams?
Oh, it's a huge advantage. I mean, on offense and defense, you're still stuck in the moment after one play in terms of having to spot the ball and run second and third down and continue a drive. On special teams, you've got one play at a time. So to have some answers or some questions answered or some looks drawn up to a more with better description, I think it's going to be extremely valuable, especially on teams. So, yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about the depth at different positions across the board on offense and defense, and that kind of depth can create some advantage in those special teams. You've got guys that are talented and can play in any of the three phases.
Sure. Yeah, there's a few. The challenge for me is finding the balance. Several guys last year, that played on offense and special teams or defense and special teams, but their role on offense or defense, I got to manage their reps on special teams and where they're at. But we've also got, I'm extremely proud to say, we've got a lot of guys that bought in on special teams last year that have a role to play on offense and defense this year. There's a lot of guys competing at middle linebacker right now. I'm sure Coach Semore mentioned it. And all those guys played on teams. Leon Hart played on special teams. Jaden Yates played on special teams. Landon Watson was a great special teams player for us last year. So it's really helped, for both offense, defense, and teams.
And sometimes that experience on special teams, that might be their first introduction to college football. Does that help slow the game down on either side of the ball?
No question. I think everybody wants to come in and play immediately, and if a kid is talented enough to do so, and it's not necessarily totally about talent, but can they comprehend what we're asking them to do, they can play early. But if we can get their feet wet on special teams, it gets them used to the game, so it's a huge advantage.
Counting down 30 Sundays to the season, just how excited are you to get back out there for 2024? Felt like the summer flew by.
Yeah, it always does, but I don't know, something just a little bit different about this year. We've got really high expectations as a program on offense, defense, and on special teams. So it's very exciting. We're fired up.
Huff complimented Reese's ability to just stay at it, grind, and work hard. When you have a guy like that who has been through ups and downs and still keeps that mentality, you kind of depend on him as a leader of that group.
Yeah, he. It's hard and it's weird to say this, but he's older now. When I got here, he walked in the door at the same time as a freshman, and now he's going into his junior campaign. So, he's led by example, which has been awesome. He's probably one of the hardest working specialists I've ever been around, coached. He's one of the hardest workers on this football team, and he's earned a lot of respect for that. But the expectations for his production on the field and the ups and downs he's had, we expect him to improve on what he did last year. So, but he's done a great job.
What's maybe one or two names that people might be able to look out for on special teams this year?
We've got so many good young redshirt freshmen. It's hard to say about true freshmen right now. We've got a limited experience with those guys. But there's some guys that redshirted last year I'm particularly excited about. I would say Ian Foster. That's a guy that I have high expectations for. Metcalf, I know he's not young, transferred to us. I've got high expectations for him. There's several others, but those two probably off the top of my head. Jordan Houston, that guys that we'll soon be talking about a lot more for sure.
Any further questions?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.